This video will end up being longer than 3 minutes, so I'll upload the link to YouTube. Today, Sunday, yet another Sunday, scrolling through Instagram, Vatican's page pops up again on my feed, and I sure do love the current Pope. However, some things steadily don't change, and a serious transformation, a revolutionary transformation needs to be done to correct the course of things, because as we can see, the current state of affairs is unacceptable at the end of the day. That's my opinion on it. And if you see the world for what it is, you can clearly see the same. So my main contention is the reason for this very publication, which is confliction of two completely separate ideologies and religions, and how they've been mashed up together. Thus, one severely undermines the other. Thus, there is a need for reformation in the church. So, this is exact quote that I saw, and incorrect interpretation of it. And this is exactly what needs to be undone if we can correct the course of the humanity and trajectory we're moving on, right? Because at the end of the day, ideology matters. Ideology of good versus ideology of evil matters greatly. So let's open to one of our parables from the gospel. The one that I saw today, quoted at the Vatican's page, Instagram page. So page 115 of the Marcion's Evangelion, the Evangelion, and the famous parable of the blind man at Jericho. All right, let's read it together. And it came to pass that as he was coming nigh unto Jericho, a certain blind man sat by the wayside begging. And hearing the multitude pass by, he asked what it meant. And they told him that Jesus of Nazareth passes by. And he cried, saying, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. And they which went before rebuked him, that he should hold his peace. But he cried so much the more, Thou son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stood and commanded him to be brought unto him. And when he was come near, he asked him, saying, What wilt thou that I shall do unto thee? And he said, Lord, that I may receive my sight. And Jesus said unto him, Receive thy sight, thy faith hath saved thee. And immediately he received his sight and followed him, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, gave praise unto God. All right, the main contention point is repeated son of the David. The blind man, in his blindness, calls Jesus repeatedly twice the son of the David. Anyone who is familiar with parables of the gospel, right, understands that in all these parables, Jesus walks around and he heals, he helps, and he does just good things. Let's call them that. As simple as that. Despite all these barriers that are being put in front of him. He heals on the Sabbath, he touches the leper, the untouched, etc., right? So in this very parable we just read, despite being misidentified twice in a row, Jesus heals. And that is the message of the parable. That's literally the entire message of this short story. Let's call it a story. Because what is the message of this story? You see, today's Vatican implied that the message of the story is that Jesus is the son of David, which is laughable, because Jesus is a scandalon. He is a rebuke to the Old Testament God and all Old Testament references. But that is the crux of the problem. Instead of understanding the parable the correct way, that Jesus, despite being misidentified twice, out of mercy heals the blind man, we're reading it completely incorrectly, thus yet again undermining the gospel, the message of the Jesus with Old Testament. And that is exactly what church needs to reform because of. So let's open our notes again. We're not going to find anything new here where I just read you again. The double blindness of the blind beggar at Jericho. The beggar is physically blind, but more importantly, he's theologically blind. Very similar to majority of modern day Christians. They're theologically blind, not because they're don't mean well, because they're leaders for 2,000 years undermined the very message of Christ with Old Testament nonsense that has nothing to do with Christianity. And that's just appalling that we continue doing this in 2026 under dire conditions, because conditions are dire. Just like then, when at the end of a Bronze Age, when in great suffering Jesus appears, when conditions are dire, so now conditions are dire. So we continue. He repeatedly identifies Jesus using the orthodox anchor of prophecy, son of David, meaning these parables likely were edited subsequently to tie Jesus to the Old Testament God. And originally, likely, because these parables, believe it or not, seen at least 2,000 years of organized religion that still cannot get their lore and get their ideology correct, right? They appeal to the ideology of good as they should, yet their messaging is conflicting and contradictory. So, does Jesus correct his title when he called out wrong? Does Jesus refuse to heal the leper? Let me put the question differently. Does Jesus ignore the widow? And so on, the hungry, the poor, downtrodden? No, he doesn't. Jesus heals him out of pure unconditional mercy, despite man using the incorrect Demiurgic title, the son of David, the creator of the world, and the world as we see it is full of suffering. So Jesus, he has none to do with the creator of the world, who created this world so imperfectly and full of suffering, where all suffer. Animals suffer, children suffer, needlessly suffer. Yet Jesus, all merciful, comes to end the suffering, and he does it to the best of his abilities until the sticks put in spokes. And that's it. That scene perfectly illustrates that Israel, trapped in the dark, could only reach out to the stranger by fumbling through the distorted, inadequate vocabulary of their own national prophecies. So the blind beggar, he stays blind. I mean, he's blind in a sense that he never understands the correct ideology of Jesus, right? But Jesus heals him out of mercy, as he does it repeatedly over and over again. Unlike the Old Testament God, who only heals you when you go to a temple and you pay some, wherever you need to pay to the priests and Pharisees, and sacrifice wherever you need to be sacrificing to the Old Testament God. It's extremely transactional. It's very materialistic. So that is why Jesus is a stumbling block, because he is not materialistic. He is not transactional. He is all mercy, all love, right? And so how can we not see two completely contradictory ideologies mashed up into one? And why does the main Christian church that should be battling this and getting this correct right now is still getting this wrong? So in conclusion, I want to say that again, the current Pope appeals to me greatly. I do hope he reforms the church and takes it back to its roots and separates the church from the evil that hangs above it and poisons it. And the leaders need to provide guidance, right? Systemic guidance, not just everything I've heard from the current Pope is great. I have no issues with anything that I've heard him say. However, as a structure, as an institution, as an Instagram page, as a ideology and understanding of where things are, where things come from, the church need to tell the truth. Tell the truth. So this book that they buried this book. The church did. So maybe they should atone for their sins and tell the truth to their parishioners. At the end of the day, just for the sake of the church itself. And it's not about this book necessarily. It's not a book. This is not about the book. It's about the ideology and the future of humanity we're moving towards, right? Either we're going to move towards truthful and just world, or we're going to move towards the miserable, exploitative, genocidal world of the Old Testament. I mean, the choice needs to be made, and it's up to our leaders to provide the guidance, the light at the end of the tunnel. I apologize for shaky hands and not a steady camera. However, I figured out this needs to be recorded to the best of my abilities, and we all need to push back. We all need to push back for the sake of good and humanity, and the ideology, the true ideology of Jesus, the mercy. Where is the mercy in the modern world? Where is the mercy in the modern world? There is no mercy in the modern world because the modern world is run by the Old Testament ideology. So how about we do what Jesus wanted us to do at the end of the day? And it doesn't matter whether we believe every story, partially believe a story, or don't believe the stories, right? What matters is the ideology, and what matters is the behavior, and the groupthink, and the humanity. I mean, this parables only implore humans to be more humane. They don't implore anything else. Whether you believe or you don't believe, extent of your belief, etc., does not matter. What matters is the ideology. So what is the ideology of Jesus Christ? you ought to answer that question to yourselves first of all. Maybe then you will find the answers and you'll see how undermined Christianity has been.